Hello and welcome to the Ruby and Pearls knitting podcast. My name's Leah. I am coming to you from West Wales in the UK, where I live with my partner and our two dogs. And one has already made an appearance. I really hope they will be good and calm today while I film this episode. You can find everything I speak about down below, as well as my measurements and my Instagram and Ravelry handle, but I'll also pop them on the screen here. As I said, my dogs are here, so please excuse any background noise that might be happening. I've been away for a while. This is episode 3, and I really wanted to film every 1 or 2 weeks, and that really didn't happen. The first thing that happened was Christmas, so, my partner was home a lot, and I feel a bit awkward filming when he's here. And then I had to work more than I was expecting to work over Christmas. And then I caught the flu, and I've never had the flu before. This was the first time. Come on, Pearl. And it was absolutely awful. I've never been so ill before, so please excuse the weird voice and pale appearance. I'm still getting over it. I'm still coughing quite a bit, so if I have to chop this video quite a few times, I do apologise. But I was really excited to come back because I'm explaining to you that I've been ill because I've had a lot of knitting time. I've been off work because I've been ill, and apart from a couple of days when I felt really ill and I barely picked up my needles, I've been knitting a lot. So for that reason, I have quite a lot to share with you today. I have 4 finished objects and 2 active whips I would like to share with you. So first things first, this I showed you in episode 1. It is, apologies, the dog knocked the tripod over. This is a beautiful colourwork yoke that I designed myself, and I just had the body left to finish, and it is knit in, I believe, Stylecraft Special Aran with Wool, which are those really big balls of yarn that you can buy in a lot of local yarn shops in the UK. And I just knit until I ran out of yarn. So the body's a bit cropped, and it still needs blocking. And the yoke is really quite deep. So I learnt a lot from this garment in that the row gauge and the length of the colourwork chart plays a big role, obviously, in the depth of the yoke. So I've learnt a lot. I'm not sure if this will ever become a design, but I do like it and I will definitely wear it. Finished item number 2 was a t-shirt that I knit that as soon as it was on the blocking mats, or off the blocking mats rather, I immediately decided that it was a no. I really didn't like it. I put it on once and immediately took it off. So it's in the sort of frog it, donate it kind of pile. I'm not even going to show you because I can't stand it. I don't want to show you. So that was a bit of a flop. The next thing that you haven't seen yet is this cardigan. And this is something I'm really proud of. Show you like this. It is a top-down drop shoulder design. Show you on the back. And I really like this shoulder detail. And I knit this in, I think it's called Woolcraft something Aran. I will put it on the screen. It is also one of those big balls, but it's actually 500 grams as opposed to all the others that from all the other brands that are 400 grams. And it is 60% wool, so it's a much higher wool content. And I really fancied something with cables. So this is what happened. So as I said, it's a top-down drop shoulder design. It features all over cables and some moss stitch on the body. It has pockets and a double knit button band, and I really love it. However, there are a few issues with this pattern. The main issue that I have is that I actually knit a sweater first in this yarn, and I was starting to feel like there were maybe some fit issues. So I blocked the body, the whole body was finished, including the neckband. I blocked the body and before I added the sleeves, and that's when I decided it wasn't going to work out. So I've ripped the whole thing out. So I've technically knit 6 garments in this time span, which is a bit crazy. Most of them were already started, but I decided to knit a cardigan instead. So the majority of this garment, unfortunately, is made with frogged yarn. Now, if any of you have experience working with frogged yarn, you will know that the best thing you can do is to turn the frogged yarn into long hanks, soak it in water, let it dry, maybe repeat the process to get all the noodling out. I didn't do that. And the worst part of it is, because it was already blocked, it wasn't just knit up, it was extra noodly. And even if I had done that, some of the stretch has just disappeared. The yarn before blocking is much bouncier, much more tightly wound. And after blocking, it just loosens up a bit. And once it's that loose, you can never really get that back. And that's fine, I think, if you're using an entire garment, frogging it, using it for something else, because it's consistent throughout the whole thing. But it's not through this. And I can tell. You might not be able to, but I can tell. I opted with this garment because most of these type of garments have a lot of cables also on the sleeves, and I wanted something a little bit different, and this is extremely boxy. So I went for a fairly fitted sleeve in single broken rib. And I think it looks really cool. But as you can see, this is the world's sloppiest broken rib. And I know this because on the other design that I started first, before I frogged it, I had a section of broken rib and it looked beautiful. And I held this next to it and it just looks terrible. So I don't like that I've had to use frogged yarn, and I would like to reknit the whole thing just with one ball of fresh yarn. The whole garment needs a bit of extra length, and the pockets are a smidge too small. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this, but my hand just about fits in there. So I think if I could add some extra length there before the button band, and also if the yarn had a bit more bounce, this wouldn't be curling so badly, and then it would be even more invisible that there's actually a pocket in there. Last but not least, I've given myself a lot of problems with this. This panel back here is a really beautiful slip stitch pattern, and I fancy a garment just in that pattern, and it's lovely. And I knew before I started that slip stitch texture tends to have a longer row gauge, so you need more rows to create 10 centimeters than you do in cables, stockinette, whatever. And I knew this, but I thought, oh, that'll block out. Unfortunately, it didn't block out. So when I got to, I think when I joined at the underarm, I realized that this was really pulling up here. So I started putting in short rows just in this section. So whenever you do the big cable cross, I would chuck in a short row, but it's not quite enough, and you might be able to see it's pulling up a little bit. There you see it at the hem. And if this was just a garment to wear, it wouldn't really bother me, but if it's a design, I really want it to be perfect. So I am going to knit a second sample. I'm probably going to gift the first sample because I don't need 2 cream identical jumpers, one with slightly better fit. So I will knit another one, and this is going to be quite a lengthy process in terms of pattern writing, etc. So this will be an autumn release, I think. Project number 3 that I've finished is this sweater. And it is knitted in King Cole Drifter Chunky, Subtle Drifter Chunky, held with a strand of Rico design Make It Tweed. And you can see it has this lovely tweedy effect. It is a top-down raglan. And if you haven't seen episode 1, I'll just briefly touch on my issues with raglans. Most raglan sweaters start with fairly few sleeve stitches, have quite a few short rows, but never enough, and end up sitting about there for me. And I don't mind a turtleneck, I don't mind a rolled neck. I'm not that bothered about things touching my neck, but if something hits me right there, it bothers me so much. And I end up pulling on it all day. So I was trying to figure out how to get around this. And if you've ever done any kind of design in terms of raglans, you will know that quite a bit of the neck depth, front and back, is determined by how many stitches you cast on for the sleeve. So I wanted to cast on more sleeve stitches, and then I also wanted to knit quite a big portion of the yoke flat and very slowly increase, rather than just doing a few short rows and joining, or always having it joined anyway. So what I did is I cast on loads more sleeve stitches. I did a much slower increase rate on the sleeve than on the body. So most really standard raglans will do an increase every other round or row, if you're working a bit of it flat, in the yoke until a certain point, when then it changes depending on your size to make it sort of a compound raglan and better fitting, because otherwise you might end up with a really deep yoke. And what I did is the majority of this body is increased every other round, as you would expect. The sleeve is increased every 4 rounds, but you start with a lot more stitches. And the only problem that raises is that you end up with a much deeper back neck as well. So what I did is, this neck hole was enormous when I finished it. And I've put some 3x1 ribbing on it, and I cast off. The main thing that's really important is to bind off extremely tightly so that this doesn't flare out. And I did some shaping on the back. I don't know if you can see this, but I brought this in a lot in order to make it sit nicely on the back. And this is the most comfortable, most wearable raglan jumper that I own. And it's funny because I've finally got this. This is my chuck-on sweatshirt that everybody talks about when they talk about the no-frills sweater, the Monday sweater, both by Petite Knits. The Lento is a really popular one, and they all bother me. I can't wear them. I haven't knit all of them. I've knit the Lento. I had to give it away. So I'm really, really pleased with this. I kind of want a second one. I am tempted to make a DK version because chunky knits are not for everybody. So that might happen. Again, probably a autumn 25 design release. Last finished object that you also haven't seen is going to be my next design. So I really need to pull my finger out and write this pattern up. I'm not doing it justice by holding it in a wonky way, am I? There we are. I might actually quickly put this on. It is a top-down drop shoulder cardigan with all over slip stitch pattern. You start with a panel on the back with increases and this shoulder detail here. You then pick up for the front, eventually join front and backs together, knit the body. Mine is relatively cropped, but you can knit it longer. And then you pick up for the sleeve, you work a little bit of short rows just to make the fit a bit nicer. And I've gone for a straight sleeve, so it's got a bit of a balloon and this lovely cinched in cuff. And I love this. I'm really, really happy with it. I knit this in King Cole Subtle Drifter DK. Hair malfunction now. King Cole Subtle Drifter DK in the shade Oatmeal. That is the main yarn. And the contrast colour is Riot, also from King Cole. And it's a beautiful colour changing yarn that I'm really, really enjoying at the moment. And I think I managed to match it up quite well so that these sides both match and the sleeves mostly match. They've got a section of blue on each sleeve, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm also really happy, it's a bit of a coincidence, but I think it's quite clever. When you do the increases for the V-neck, I didn't finish all the increases before joining the body front and back. So there's a few more increases to work before the V is complete. And what that has done is that even though I managed to match the colours pretty well on both sides here, because I've had to do a few working back and forth rows across the front, back and front before this V joins together, you can make sure that where it joins, you are actually already working, not in the round, but the whole body in one go. And therefore the colours are going to match up really nicely there. So I think that's pretty good. A double knit button band, time consuming, but worth it in my opinion, brings everything together nicely. And yes, I am really, really enjoying this. Oh, the Riot is in the shade teal. And these are both very inexpensive yarns. If you haven't watched episode 1, I go into why I'm using more inexpensive yarns at the moment in there. So yeah, that is final finished object, and I will be writing this up ASAP. I have to do it because I think it's really good and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. And I really like how this sort of plain stockinette double knit band gets sort of echoed in this section back here. And yeah, I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out. So I'm going to keep it on for the rest of the video. Let's talk about my active weights. I do still have 2 hats on the needles. I have my partner's halibut sweater. Those are the things that haven't received any love. I've also cast on someone else's design for a Raglan sweater that I'm not going to mention here because I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it on the needles or not. I'm just really enjoying designing and I don't really seem to have the same kind of pleasure from knitting other people's designs at the moment. So let's talk summer knits. So myself and Emily from Emily Knits, we're really good friends on Instagram and we've met through podcasting. We decided that we'd like to run a knit along, and we spoke about this a few weeks ago, and I think she casually mentioned it in one of her videos, but unfortunately then I got ill and I haven't been able to film since. But our knit along is going to be called Get Ahead Mal, hashtag Get Ahead Mal, and we're going to use that hashtag on Instagram. I'll put it on the screen here so that you can see it as well. And essentially we're going to run it from, I would say probably any time now. It's going to be a very casual knit along / make along. So crochet is very welcome as well. Sewing's welcome if you want to sew something, that's fine. Any other craft is welcome as well. The idea is that if you live in a climate like the UK, we have this problem that the in-between seasons seem to stretch enormously and proper summer doesn't really happen for a very long time. And if you're familiar with summer knitting, a lot of summer garment designs are made in fingering weight. They take a long time to knit. By the time they come out, they might not come out right at the start of the season, and obviously there's heaps of designs online already. But if you like to get enticed by new designs, they might not come out right at the start of the season, they might come out somewhere in the middle. So by the time you've knit that item, it'll probably go cold again. And that just seems to happen a lot in our climate. So the idea of the Get Ahead Mal is to start knitting summer garments now, meaning that you will actually end up with a summer garment when summer hits that you can wear straight away. This mal was kind of my idea, slightly selfishly, because as someone who's trying to bring out a few knitwear designs this year, I have to be way ahead of the seasons. So at the moment, I've now stopped knitting sweaters, at least sweaters that I want to turn into a design, because they're just not going to come out in time. For those of you who've never designed anything, just as if you can imagine this kind of time frame, you come up with an idea. It will probably take you a few weeks to knit and to write up and to edit. I'd say a month until you get testers involved. If you want to give your testers a decent amount of time, you'll have to give them about 10 to 12 weeks. So the whole process is about a 4-month process. And if I start with sweaters now, we will end up bringing them out sort of end of April, beginning of May, which is when most people, as I'm told, don't really want to knit sweaters anymore. I knit sweaters all year round, doesn't bother me. But that is a thing, and that is why I try to get ahead a little bit. So Get Ahead Mal, we will probably run it until, the idea was January, February, March, but because I'm running behind a bit, because I've been sick, it'll be extended a bit. We'll keep it really casual. We will have some prizes at the end, and yeah, we'd love for you to join. And in the spirit of the Get Ahead Mal, I have started my first summer design. Now, I briefly mentioned a DK t-shirt that I knit the other day, or finished the other day, that I'm not going to wear anymore, or that I'm never going to wear actually. And I think what I've discovered is that DK summer garments are really enticing because they knit up faster, but all my DK tees and tanks have grown in width, become shorter in length, look a little bit frumpy, and I think the main reason why I don't wear them that often is if I've knitted something, I kind of want that to be the main feature of my outfit. And in my climate in the UK, it is too chilly to wear just a t-shirt for most of the summer, and then suddenly it's quite warm and a DK t-shirt is a bit too warm, and then it's cooler again. And I don't really want to layer a DK t-shirt with a cardigan. I'd rather layer something shop bought. So for those times that I actually can wear a DK t-shirt, well, they don't exist really, and I would rather have something fingering weight. And I've always been put off by how long fingering weight takes, but it's really not that big a deal. I'm trying to convince myself anyway. So this is what I've cast on. It's a little bit, it's curling a bit because it's not blocked. Oh dear. It's curling a lot because it's not blocked, which is a shame because I think it's actually very, very neat. So this at the moment just looks like a tank top. It has beautifully folded over edging on the neck and the armholes. I'm not holding this very well, am I? And it has this little tiny, tiny shoulder detail there. If I could. There we go. And it has negative ease and it's fingering weight. I am using Yarn Art Flowers Unicolor. That's what it's called. It is, I think, 55% cotton, 45% acrylic, polyamide, something synthetic. And it comes in a million colours and it's incredibly inexpensive. And I am actually knitting a dress. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, fingering weight dress, why would you do that to yourself? Don't worry, it is not actually a fingering weight dress. So you start off with a fingering weight tank top, essentially. I will ask my editor to put in some bust shaping. I personally don't require bust shaping, but I know a lot of people like that, especially for a fitted item. This has probably about 12-ish centimetres of negative ease. And there will also be some waist shaping. And essentially you'll knit this in this fingering weight yarn up to the waist, where I'm going to put in a little channel where you can either put in an I-cord or an elastic. And from there on, the skirt part of this dress is actually going to be knit in DK. Behind this is that you get this lightweight, fingering weight garment, essentially, that you'll feel comfortable wearing in the heat of the summer. But the skirt will have a bit more weight to it because it's DK, so it will hang nicely. And it will take less time to knit because it's DK. And it'll hopefully be a bit less likely to be see-through as well because it's DK. So what you could do, what I initially planned to do, was to make this top in this yarn and then use DK weight leftover balls of cotton and cotton blends to make a stripy skirt. And I was going to do that, but I had a better idea, and I'm waiting for the postman as we speak, because this yarn art flowers also comes in yarn cakes of a gradient sort of fade look. And I found one online, and it will actually tell you which colours of the unicolor balls are used to make that fade. So I found one that actually starts with the same grey as I'm using for the vest part, and it then fades through a light grey, cream into blue. And I've bought 2 cakes because they're fingering weight, and I'm holding them double, or I will be holding them double, for the skirt. And I think it's going to look really, really cool. So I'm very, very excited for that. It will take me a while to knit, but hopefully not too long. I think the skirt will take about 1,000 meters, thereabouts, maybe a little bit more. And I'm getting quite close. I've got about that much done after the armhole join. So I'm getting fairly close to the point where I will be doing the channel for the I-cord tie at the waist. So this is really exciting. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I don't know why I cannot get this to sit nicely to show you, because I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. There we go, that's better. You can see this lovely neckline. It will look a lot better once it's blocked. So yeah, I'm really, really happy with this. Really looking forward to being able to wear it. I've tried on the top part, and it is really well fitting so far. So I really hope that it will turn into a lovely summer design. The other thing that I'm actively working on is not a design by me, for a change. There we are. Got a bit of a tangle. This is called the Masgot wrap. I'll put it on screen. By, I think the design is called Lete's Knit, something like that. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I'll also put that on screen. And it is a extremely time-consuming scarf, essentially. It's very wide. I think my stitch gauge is a smidge off, but I don't really care. And it is knit in 2 colours, just in garter stitch. And then every now and then she puts in these little blips of a 3rd colour that make these little, I don't know, sickle-shaped inserts. That's the word I think she uses for them. And they will sort of be randomly placed and random shapes. And I am using, this is my main colour. It's a little bit greener than it's coming up on screen. It is a needle and thread singles yarn that I bought ages ago. I can't remember the name of the yarn. The other colour is this beautiful light blue with a little moment of sort of violet in them, or in it. And this is a Yarn Undyed, I think is the brand. And I bought this in a bargain bin at Wonderwall, which is a yarn show relatively local to me. And for the blips, this is not looking at its best. Again, much greener in real life. This is from Rosie's Moment. It is a merino silk singles blend. And these yarns, apart from this one, the other two are some of my favourite hand-dyed yarns that I have in my stash. And that's why they look so terrible, because I've knit them and then unravelled them because I wasn't happy with the project, and knit them again and unravelled them again. And I really hope that this is the one where they're actually going to stay in, because I think it's really pretty. So this is going to take me forever. I'm going to knit, 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 knit. And it will be a scarf, so it will sort of probably fall a bit like folded up like this when it's finished. And I probably won't show you this every time because it might take a while. And I've just realised there's a bit of a colour scheme happening. Everything I'm knitting is either bluey, greeny, like this, with moments of beige and grey. Like all this. But I think that's pretty on brand for me. That those are the colours that I enjoy. To finish off today's episode, I want to talk about both everything I knit in 2024 and knitting plans for 2025, because those are two sort of videos that have been flooding YouTube lately. And I'm not going to be making an everything I knit in 2024 because I knit a lot. I have heaps of garments that I've made, and a lot of them I've actually already given away because I didn't like them and didn't wear them, and because I don't like to have too many items in my wardrobe that I don't wear. So it would be very difficult for me to make an everything I knit in 2024 video. On top of that, I also kept very little to no notes at all, so it'd be very hard for me to make it chronological or put any logic behind it. As an alternative, and this is an idea that I've had, and I would love it if you could put in the comments down below if this is something you would like to see. I have thought about going through my wardrobe and making a mammoth video of everything I have in my wardrobe. And what that would mean is I would pull out all my garments. I wouldn't show you accessories and socks and things, but all my garments, I would pull them all out, I would try them all on, and we would go through them, and I would decide whether I'm keeping them, frogging them, or passing them on to other people. And before you think, oh my god, how many garments do you have? It's not as many as you think. I'm pretty sure I've given my mum around about 20 sweaters in the past few years. My lovely friend Emma also has received quite a few sweaters, and I've given her some for her daughter as well. I have a colleague in work who graciously took on loads of my garments. She's currently in university and lives in uni housing, and loads of people she just shared them out basically. And yeah, so I don't actually own all that many garments. There's still quite a lot of them, don't get me wrong. There's got to be at least 30 or 40 sweaters here, but it's not quite as many as you'd expect if you know me and know how much I knit and know that I've been garment knitting for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. Most of them I actually don't own anymore. I must have knit, I'd say I've probably knit 200 garments. It would be interesting to sort of try and find them all in one way or another, pictures or something, because I don't keep a Ravelry project page either because I'm too lazy to do that. So I'm going to try and be better at taking photos this year, putting them on Instagram, keeping a bit of a record, filming more frequently, so that at the end of this year I could hopefully make a Everything I Knit in 2025 video. So if you'd like to see a video of me going through my entire sweater stash, let me know. Knitting plans for 2025. Now, I've thought long and hard about my knitting plans, and I made a big mistake at the beginning of 2024 of having pretty rigid plans. And I was going through a bit of a bad mental health patch at the start of 2024, and I think in a desperate effort to have some control over things, I wanted to put some rigid plans in place, and that was a very bad idea because it ruined my hobby that normally brings me joy and sort of took the joy away, and that just made me even more unwell. So to cut a long story short, I'm not making any strict plans, but I do have some guidelines and things that I would like to stick to. So I would like to buy less than I use, so sort of a net negative stash like a lot of people are doing. I'm not banning myself from buying yarn. I am also going to cast on when I want to cast on. I think the worst plan I had for 24 was that I was getting very, very overwhelmed by how many items I owned in my stash. Not in my stash, in my wardrobe. And I was starting to think, oh my god, what am I going to do when in 20 years time I am flooded by sweaters. And at the time I was knitting with a lot of natural, beautiful, expensive fibres. And as much as I do have a few people who will graciously take on some of my sweaters that I don't want to wear anymore or I've never worn, it feels a little bit extreme to be spending 70, 80, 90 pounds on a jumper that I knit in a week that I then end up giving to someone else, and it's not for Christmas or a birthday or a specific occasion. So I decided that I needed to stop knitting so many items for myself so that I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed. And what I ended up deciding was that I should have at least 50% of my whips being items for other people, so gift knits, sample knits, things like that. And I immediately hated it because I don't really enjoy knitting for other people, I really enjoy knitting for myself. So I found the solution in using much less expensive yarn, knitting as much as I want for myself, and passing things on that I don't end up wearing, which I think is a much better solution for me. That's another reason why I use inexpensive, more budget-friendly yarns now. And also what has helped with the more budget-friendly yarns, that most of them are machine washable, and so I have a much wider pool of people who would like to receive such a garment, because not everybody wants to hand wash and is my size, so it was very hard for me to find people to pass things on to. All this rambling aside, my main goals for 25 are to try and buy less than I knit, so have a bit of a net negative in my stash. I am planning to release as many garment patterns as I feel is feasible and is comfortable for me. I haven't set myself a specific number, so we will see how that goes. I am hoping to learn new techniques, do things that I haven't done before, which I am aware as a fairly proficient knitter there aren't that many techniques, but there are still. I've got very little intarsia experience. I haven't done much double knitting other than button bands and things like this, but I know you can do colour work and double knit. So I've never tried entrelac. I would like to try that. So these are all things that I would like to consider for this year. The other main plan for this year is that I am no longer knitting for other people. And that is not a hard and fast rule. I will probably knit a few little things. But the main reason, as I explained, is that I don't really enjoy knitting for other people. And I have this stupid habit where I see a garment that I think would look really cute, especially a kid's garment, on one of my friend's children, and or a garment that I think of a friend, an adult size garment that makes me think of a friend, or sometimes I just have the impulse of asking someone if they would like something hand knitted by me. And I don't know why I do this to myself, because I have the idea of knitting for someone, I get in touch with them, I ask them to pick a pattern, so we discuss patterns, we discuss yarns, we get quite excited over it, I get a massive dopamine hit from it, I get really excited about the project, and then when it actually comes to sitting down and knitting the item, I have zero motivation to do it. Meanwhile, someone out there, a friend of mine normally, is expecting something because they didn't ask for a knitted garment. I offered. I told them that I would like to knit for them, and I offered something to them, And now suddenly I haven't got the motivation to make it, and then the guilt kicks in. And this is a total predicament that I create for myself. So no more of that. If I want to knit for someone else, I am not going to tell them what I'm going to knit for them. And I know telling them is often a good idea, because you end up knitting something that they'd actually really like and not something that they don't want to wear. But I think what I'm going to do, if I want to knit a kid's garment, I will make that item, and at the end I will send a person a picture and say, hey, would you like this for your child? And if they don't, that's fine as well. And that way there's no pressure to finish things. I can rip things out when I don't enjoy them anymore. And I think that's a big goal for me as well. If I don't enjoy something, just rip it out. It doesn't have to get finished. It doesn't matter. And I think in line with designing more, I have felt less of an urge to apply for test knits, which is another thing that creates pressure, which is a pressure that I quite enjoy and that I have enjoyed in the past because it actually helps me finish things. But I'm just going to not have that pressure this year. I might do the odd test knit, but probably not many. So to sum up, try to buy a bit less, work on my own designs, just knit for me, and rip things out if I don't want to finish them, because this is, at this point in time, still very much a hobby and it's supposed to be enjoyable. I would love to hear what your knitting goals are for 2025. I might do a make 9. If you're not familiar with make 9, people will often at the start of the year, or knitters will often at the start of the year, create a collage of 9 photos of 9 projects they would like to knit in this year. And I think that might be quite cool, because then I can refer back to that whenever I have the urge to knit something from a different designer and not self-draft something or design something myself. So I might consider doing something like that, but otherwise my plans are very loose and I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit chaotic. I felt a little bit out of practice, even though it's only episode 3, but I felt really in a rhythm when I first started, and it's obviously been a little while. So I really hope you can't hear my neighbour's dog that's barking outside. I'm constantly checking that my dogs don't start barking. But they're both asleep next to me at the moment, and yeah, I'm really glad to be back to filming. Hopefully this can start becoming a sort of weekly or every other week event, and I would love to hear from you. I really enjoy it when you reach out to me down below or on Instagram. I've really loved chatting with everybody. So thank you very much for watching, and see you soon. Bye bye.